So the year is 1995, and you have two swords and sorcery fantasy shows on TV. They bear a strong family resemblance, all right? They've got like 90% of the same cast and crew. And they both have a lot of really good things going for them, right? They've got muscular action heroes and campy humor and melodrama. They've got crazy wire work action scenes. And just the entire cast is gorgeous people as far as the eye can see. With those pieces alone, you've got a pretty good 1990s genre show, am I right? But then when you look at both of these shows years later, one of them you remember, it's fun. Some aspects or people associated with it can be a little disappointing.
Disappointed!
But then the other one is crazy evergreen and decades later still has an army of sapphics at its back ready to defend it, self included. So why? Let's jump to a different form of media for a second. There's no doubt that Batman exists in the form that we know him as because of Superman before him. It's part of the mythos, right? They wanted to make another Superman, and out came this little goth detective. But they live just as happily apart from each other as they do being part of the same stories together. They work in the Justice League super well, but Batman has plenty going on by himself to sustain a near century of stories. Batman isn't just interesting because of Batman, though. I mean, yeah, he's cool. He's a collection of classic archetypes that we all love. What makes Batman Batman are the characters in the world around him. His team of orphans that he inspires. It's Gotham City as a living, breathing entity of its own.
Which is so much bigger than just the Joker. Oh my God, please, for the dear love of God, can we get some other villains in there more often every now and again? Just let the guy take a nap.
Similar with our warrior princess, Xena herself. She can walk into another TV show with a relatively unknown actress for a couple episodes and come out with a 6-season franchise. But it's not just Xena that we're watching. I mean, no doubt about it. Xena is a draw in and of herself, right? She is a complex and unique protagonist. Who else has a backstory of being a former war criminal trying to atone for things that you know are completely unatonable? And who else still goes forth anyways and does the best they can to make the world a better place? And also along the way, they can sing and sew and impersonate princesses and shit. Also, remember, this is 1995. In major media, we've got Ripley, we've got She-Ra, we've got Scully. Janeway just appeared. No 7 of 9 yet. But also, like, the only Buffy the Vampire Slayer that we know is still Christy Swanson. A kick-ass female action hero is still kind of a novelty. And while we're at it, yeah, let's be real. This is pre-Ellen coming out. This is pre-Will and Grace. For them to be as openly queer as they are is also kind of fucking cool and radical for the time. This is 1995, and your star kisses a trans woman who is also an AIDS activist. And yet some people will still say that this show isn't queer enough. But also, let's be real. Pretty women kissing other pretty women is not enough to hang a lasting narrative on. Good thing Xena's got plenty of other good things going too. There's this narrative device known as a foil. The word comes from backing gems with foil to make them shine more brightly, and that's kind of the point of a foil character. This character, whose existence as the opposite of someone, usually your protagonist, serves to highlight aspects of that character. For examples, we've got Dr. Frankenstein and the Monster. We've got Holmes and Watson. Looking back to earlier, we've got gloomy Batman and symbol of hope Superman, right? We've got Batman and the Joker with the order versus chaos thing. We've got some traumatized kid with a facial scar and glasses being put opposite of his rich kid bully with Becky's good hair. Also, for the record, your foil doesn't have to be an antagonist or a sidekick, but those are the two that Xena has on retainer. Gabrielle, our battling bard of Potadia. Amazon queen for the ages. Oh my god, this ray of sunshine is the human embodiment of all that is good and hopeful in the world. This mostly non-lethal lover of life inspires multiple religious leaders across the world with the power of her heart. If this lady got a lantern ring, it would be love, and she and Wonder Woman would use their hearts to solve all the wrongs of the universe.
If you're curious, I think Joxer would actually be a Green Lantern, and by the end of the series, Xena would have a White Lantern ring.
A village girl with starry eyes and dreams that go beyond marrying young farmer Perdiccas. Gabrielle has more spirit than the people of Podadia care to handle. How do you solve a problem like Gabrielle? Let those sweet doe eyes fall on the finest specimen of woman to ever come this way, who also happens to be beating the shit out of some slavers. From the very first episode of the entire series, Gabrielle puts in the overtime on being the opposite of our moody, tortured protagonist. Check out what Renee O'Connor herself mentioned in an interview. It's really interesting to watch how I started off playing Gabrielle, and then how Lucy was so complicated and complex as Xena. And dark, really, really dark. You see how animated I am in the scene trying to talk the villagers out of stoning Xena? I've got the hands going. That was who I thought Gabrielle was. But Lucy was so still, I had to balance that. Everything we learn about Gabrielle, especially in the early episodes, is in direct contrast to who Xena is as a person. Right there in Sins of the Past, episode 101, we are watching Gabrielle experience her call to action that catalyzes her on her own hero's journey. And everything about it is completely opposite of how Xena got started. When violence came to Gabrielle's village, she got a reformed warlord who also brought along opportunity and education and the sort of life that Gabrielle could only ever dream of. Once upon a time, Xena was also a villager with plans to live a simple life in a tranquil place until a warlord came to town. That made Xena take up arms. That made Xena fight. And that made Xena suffer a trauma so cataclysmic that it took her down the path to becoming the destroyer of nations. Sure, there is a lot more violence and constant risk of death on the road than Gabrielle anticipated, but she's adaptable, open-minded, and eager to look at the world with hope. Especially this early in the show, Gabrielle's doe-eyed innocence is our rubric for understanding how intense Xena is. This is not a world where just anyone can use a staff to kick a circle of guys in the face 100 times in a row. That's a thing only Xena and other characters born of war can do in this universe. You have to earn that ladder match with blood, sweat, and tears. Every time Gabrielle experiences something new and awful and heart-wrenching in some way, we're reminded that Xena has seen this shit plenty of times over and probably been on both sides of it. But Gabrielle still loves her anyways. Where Xena looks at herself and sees her sins and her shame, her eternal and unending guilt, Gabrielle looks at Xena with love and compassion. She sees the final product of all of those experiences, good and bad, and Gabrielle sees someone she admires. She admires Xena for her bravery, her knowledge, her compassion, and her drive to be better. As an adventuring partner, a friend, as family and life partners, Gabrielle's love and hope help Xena shine brighter to everyone, including herself.
Speaking of whole, as in complete, there's someone else we still have to talk about, right? Gabrielle is Xena's future. And sure, there's a great narrative line between the two of them. They push and pull on each other. They create tension. They build.
These ladies are
but that's not still a super strong structure.
Xena's darkness lets Gabrielle's light shine all the brighter. Gabrielle's light illuminates all the wonderful good in Xena. The heart of this show is the growth of a character introduced as a foil who ends up making our protagonist whole.
Before we move on, I do need to highlight that Gabrielle is, in and of herself, her own brave badass. She becomes an Amazon queen for a reason. And not just in later seasons, but immediately she is hardcore. Her literal first line in this show is stepping up against a bunch of slavers to try and protect the other women being abducted with her. That is a classic opening salvo of a hero. All right, so time for a useless geometry lesson. Please don't use this on your homework, but apply it to this conversation about this swords and sorcery show. You know what the strongest shape in geometry is? Triangles are so strong because of the way their structure distributes forces. When one corner of the triangle has force applied, that force is distributed equally down each side. And then this distribution of force leads to two sides being compressed while the third is stretched. Enter Callisto. When Gabrielle met Xena, her life was saved. It was bettered in so many possible ways. Their crossing opened doors for Gabrielle to live the sort of life that she could only dream of. And yes, we also discover eventually that they are soulmates, just destined to be together across universes and time. When Callisto met Xena, she already had a pretty good life. She was living the dream, and then it burned to the ground. Literally. Xena can explain.
Many years ago, there was a village called Syrah. It was a village just like yours. Small and prosperous, full of life. Until the day that my army came. Until the day that I came. Destroyed it. Under my orders, my men, they sacked the village. Burned the houses. And killed every living thing. Everything was destroyed. Including the soul of one young, innocent girl. Who will never be able to reclaim her childhood. And will never know what the fates had planned for her if not for me.
Broken in pretty much every possible way by what Xena and her army took from her, Callisto is a force of blind, unrelenting, insatiable rage, forever preserved by the hopeless pain that has long since consumed her entire soul. Easiest answer of all, this chick has a red lantern ring. Xena, she's tactical, she's learned, she's measured. Yes, she can be motivated by rage pretty easily, in fact. But even her roughest edges are still so polished and honed as to be sharp enough to slice a man in two. Gabrielle has a spirit that cannot be broken, and that resilience keeps her good and hopeful through the literal worst. Xena and Gabrielle together, they're both growing, developing people forever charging forward. Callisto is chaos. Even when she finds herself unsatisfied with revenge, she physically cannot allow peace. You're out there making your name for yourself as a hero across the countryside. Not anymore. You survive life on the road and even end up happily married with your BFF at your side. Nah. Think you can kill the bad guy and leave her to her eternal punishment for her own sin. Time to drop some scarecrow fear toxin on Hercules' birthday party and then go become immortal. Maybe you can finally come to terms with your past and you can raise your secret son with your girlfriend and everyone can just be happy. Enjoy musically arguing with each other about which one of you got your kids killed.
It's your fault! No, it's yours! How could you?
Check it out, right? So over here, we've got Xena, and she's got her god-killing powers and her resurrection and her crazy awesome backflips off of walls. And over there, we've got Gabrielle inspiring the New Testament or something, right? What does Callisto do? She goes off on her own adventures and comes back as a literal god. And then even that literal god is a sign of what Xena cannot escape on a meta level, right? Callisto gets her godhood on Xena's starter show, and that godhood that she has is in line with a fictionalized Greek pantheon that the show really struggles to move beyond in its later seasons. Even when we get to the point that this character is supposed to get some sort of goddamn peace, she reincarnates into another warrior badass with Xena-related family trauma.
Who's my girl? Who's my girl? You are!
Xena has a solid head on her shoulders, and she is not afraid to kill when she knows that it is necessary. But she stares down this monster of her own making, and she can't bring herself to continue a cycle of violence that already started when she burned Syrah to the ground. That is a hell of a good emotional wound for a villain to reach into with salty fingers. But That cycle of violence is just continuing in a new way every time that we let Callisto live and continue on and murder children. I mean, we literally are introduced to Callisto as a character with her burning a village and murdering a 6-year-old boy. And the show is really good at that too, right? As long as we understand Xena's struggle with why she struggles with Callisto, that's great. But also, Callisto never gets an out. Regardless of Xena's responsibility for all of this or Xena's perceived responsibility, I want to make it clear, the show wants to make it clear, just life should make it clear. Callisto does not get a pass. Callisto commits war crimes. Callisto is a killer. Callisto is a bad guy through and through. Hell, you pull Callisto, Xena, she's still and contemplative, trying to better the world. Callisto is a manic pixie Hannibal Lecter, and that's really regardless of what show she's even in. Callisto thrives on Xena on the home show, though. Callisto and Xena have the sort of heel and babyface relationship that keeps pro wrestling running. These equally matched warriors who can fight each other eternally in gripping acrobatic conflict. And it all works together. You can throw these three in pretty much any situation, and you're going to get a good narrative out of it. Or at least you're going to have the basis for one. The way that Gabrielle's light illuminates Xena's complicated inner self, Callisto's horrific violence shows us how far Xena has come and how far down Xena could fall again. Every time Callisto enters to confront Xena with her past, Xena struggles with it, and then she emerges stronger and more resolved in the goodness of who she can be. When force is applied to Xena and Gabrielle, Callisto stretches and shines. That is her moment. When Callisto applies that force, Xena and Gabrielle share the narrative weight of it together. When Xena is the force, which happens often, this show is called Xena, Warrior Princess, her actions ripple in those of Callisto and Gabrielle. When Gabrielle is challenged by the horrors of the world around her from time to time, Xena and Callisto are the examples of where these paths can lead, for better and worse. And that's a pretty solid structure to build your TV show on. I just want to say thank you for making it this far. This is literally my very first YouTube video ever, so thank you for giving me a little bit of your time. Also, I'm not a pro at any of this. Please don't use anything I say on your geometry homework, your English homework, anything like that, right? I am just but a poor fiction writer who likes to talk about things that she likes. It's not that big a deal. However, though, if you want to subscribe, I do have plenty of big plans, more Xena content, more deep dives into other genre media, especially when it comes to like earnestness and narrative devices that people sometimes like overlook or don't give credit for. But really, in general, if you want to talk about magic, swords, hot chicks with existential issues, I'm Mercury and I'm your girl. Also, if you know where I can get an actual metal, screen accurate looking original chakram, please let me know. My beloved plastic chakram of 20 something years is lonely, and that rubber is getting pretty floppy. Drop a comment, share a link, anything like that is just super exciting. It's going to give me amazing happy butterflies in my heart. But in the meantime, just take care of yourself out there, okay? Please and thank you.